we're recording. You can go ahead and get started.
Great. Well, hello, everybody. I hope you're all doing well. Thanks for being here today. We are having this webinar in our series of webinars that we're going to be having every Thursday at 3 o'clock Eastern to try to address issues that states are having in responding to the COVID-19 virus, how they're having to work through the changes that we've obviously all have been encountering. One of the biggest things that states have been doing is just trying to figure out how to operate in a remote environment to the extent they have to. And next Thursday, I wanted to mention that we're going to try to address issues that specifically that we've had questions about or that people included when they sent in their surveys. And next Thursday, we're going to talk about, focus on how to conduct remote device demonstrations and provide some concrete information and examples and best practices as they apply to specifically the demonstrations that state territory AT programs have to do. And so I know that was an area that a lot of you wanted to focus on. And the Zoom number, just a reminder, for each of these calls will be the same as this one. There's no registration required, so just remember to bookmark or use the same Zoom address as you're using for this one. Okay. Couple of things. There we go. So just some of the areas that we received questions on and just specifics in terms of some of the things that people have been focusing on. If you have been shifting your staff and or your contractors to a telework environment, and the majority of us have, what has been involved? How have you done it? What has been some of your technology or connectivity issues in terms of equipment? You know, if you've had to get phone cards, expanding internet plans, just anything like that. Whether there's issues in terms of where you're housed, or you having specific issues if you're working at a university and trying to get all these services and staff transferred to working remotely. Do you have access to your databases or other software that you would need to maintain services? And then how are you messaging or communicating with what's happening with your program, with the public and with agencies and with individuals that are using your services? What services have you been able to continue in some kind of modified manner, whether it's demonstrations or device loans, state financing reuse training? And then supposing that that the issues you're facing are going to last beyond the next 2 or 3 weeks. I mean, what other issues are going to be facing and looking at? So there's we have 4 folks that are been in their states and how they've been approaching that. Sarah Sack from AT3 Kansas, Linda Jaco from Oklahoma Able Tech, Lori Brooks from the Oregon Access Technologies, and Brian Norton from Indiana from InData. So with that, can we go to Sarah? Can you just start and kind of talking about what's been happening in Kansas and how you've been working in terms of working with trying to get things set up there?
Sure. Yeah, when Marty and Amy and I were talking about this earlier, we talked a lot about how Kansas has been messaging what is happening. We actually suspended all face-to-face services on St. Patrick's Day. And before we did that, we reached out to all of our subcontractors and just, talked with them individually and then talked with them as a group saying, the things like we're no longer going to be seeing people face to face. We will continue to pay for services that the subcontractors provided, and so forth. So we did a lot of outreach with our subcontractors. Then we met with via Zoom with our 24 staff folks that we have working on this effort. And we had 2 different Zoom meetings and a long list of things to share with them on how we were going to work and how we wanted to continue to have tasks for, even the part-time folks that provide services through to the program. Then beyond that, we reached out, and our advisory council played a very key role in getting the messaging out. So we quickly had the information out on our website with a post. We had the information out, through our various stakeholder groups. So that happened really pretty fast. We had our staff contacting their consumers that they work with in the afternoon of the 17th, and then continuing to do that, sharing the information that, we needed to change services. Originally, our very first message in the morning of the 17th, that the face-to-face services would be suspended until April 15th. By the end of the day, that had been changed until May 15th. Now Kansas is looking at least until May 30th. And so that's coming from the university, that's coming from our governor. So we had a pretty robust messaging outreach campaign. And we're still, we're adding new posts to our website as we have things that arise, like a change in answering time for our telecommunications program and so forth. So we're using our website, we're using Twitter a lot, and we're using our stakeholders really to get the messaging piece out there. So Linda, do you want to talk about Oklahoma and how you messaged?
Sure, I had to unmute. Yes, okay, so much of what Sarah just shared has been somewhat similar to what's going on at OSU. Obviously, we are having to follow our guidance because we're here at Oklahoma State University. Oklahoma State University has not gotten quite as severe date-wise as what Sarah just explained, although it's all pretty a similar scenario. We got the message last Tuesday that as of the 18th of March, we would be, stopping, the university would go to online, and they would be stopping any public facing sort of services, and everything would go online. And that was only to happen until April 6th. Only yesterday afternoon, as of 6 p.m. last night, did we get the message that that would extend to April 15th. So we're nowhere like at the end of May or anything like that. So what that has meant for Able Tech thus far is that we did on the 18th close our doors. Apparently not all departments did, because that, as I already told you, came down yesterday afternoon starting at 6 p.m. till April 15th. So it sort of surprised me because I thought all departments had done that. But anyway, so our doors shut to the public on March 18th. It just so happened that on that very day, well, first of all, it was spring break week. So we had to address a variety of different things with partners, students, staff, etc. And when it came to staff, immediately it required a lot of additional paperwork at OSU because they have what's called temporary telecommuting documents, which must be completed. And let me just say that has been a lot of fun, not. in trying to get all of these forms completed for staff who would begin to telecommute. It is not a requirement that we telecommute. I'm still at work. A skeletal crew is still at work with me. The idea of giving staff the choice to telecommute is that they must be able to fulfill the job requirements. So on that very form, they have to indicate the hours that they're going to be telecommuting, how it is that they're going to be able to successfully telecommute and complete their jobs. In other words, can they VPN in? Can they remotely access all that they would need to be accessing if they were at work? What sort of equipment are they going to be taking and borrowing? And all of that has to be completed. It's about a 6-page form. And all of that had to be submitted and signed. We fall under the Vice President for Student Affairs, so all of that had to get processed. It's been a little interesting because things have changed, sometimes 2 and 3 times a day, sometimes 2 and 3 times a week, with regard to things like mailing services, because we have a lot of mail that goes in and out. Only yesterday did it change to where they're no longer going to be picking up and delivering mail. We now must go elsewhere on campus and other locations in town, depending upon if it's UPS, et cetera, to get packages and to take packages. It just so happened that on March 18th, when we made the first decision to close to the public, we already had a scheduled meeting with all of our partners. We have 15 statewide partners, and so that worked out perfectly. We met with them via Zoom. We shared with them what this was going to mean with regard to sanitization, and that we were going to be, temporarily having to postpone demonstrations and short-term loans, although we have a lot of folks who run demonstration sites as a business. And so if they can ensure, if they are still seeing clients face-to-face, and I'm not saying all of them are, but in the cases where they do, they must assure that they are doing sanitization of each device after each use, and taking the utmost care with what they are doing. We have temporarily stopped short-term loans. We are trying to get back a lot of equipment that was already loaned out. We had 246 items loaned out on the day that occurred. And so if it is people shipping things back to us from the community or an employment status, that's one thing. But schools right now are being told, and I think there's different messages being told to different schools, that they cannot go back into their schools because, again, remember, this occurred when they were on spring break. And now they're finding out that the schools in Oklahoma are going to be, when I say schools, I mean pre-K through 12, have made the decision to remain closed as of yesterday through the end of this school year. So the idea of going back into the schools to get those devices to mail them back to us is going to pose a little bit of an issue, at least in some school districts. We have posted a lot of signs, messages on various parts and pieces of our website. On the home page, it speaks to, Dear Able Tech community, and goes down through what it is that we are doing currently with regard to different programs and services because of COVID-19. We then have different messages on different parts of our website that might speak specifically to reuse, or specifically to demo, or specifically to financial loans, or specifically to demonstrations, etc. So it's required a lot of additional messaging. We had a number of in-state trainings that were already scheduled. We have had to do a lot of additional messaging with regard to that. And even after doing it, we had to change it again because as we speak, today was our workshop 3 in a series of workshops to school districts. It was going to be in person. We changed it to Zoom. And then at the very last minute, a couple of days ago, fortunately before today, we found out that because it was happening in the initial State Department of Ed's time frame of all things must cease and desist until April 6th, that we could not even offer the Zoom in that time frame. So we had to again message everyone and say, I know we already changed this from an in-person to a Zoom, but now we're canceling it. Stay tuned. We will be doing it because the State Department of Ed is going to lift that and let professional services continue after April 6th online. But it just so happened that March 26th fell before April 6th, though that one required double messaging. We were asked by the State Department of Ed last Thursday to create an FAQ about what part of our services would remain available with regard, we have a very large contract with them across all school districts to provide AT through in a number of ways, workshops, boot camps, et cetera, but of course demonstration and short-term loans. And so on Thursday, I responded and said, of course, we'll be happy to do that. By when would you like it? And the answer came back, we need it completed and to us by Monday. So I said, all right, we'll prioritize and get that to you by Monday. So we created a specific ATFAQ for students. Realizing that we did it for students, we decided, well, if we're going to do it for students, let's also do it for the public at large. So we then created an FAQ for the public at large and have these things posted. So I will say it has created, I'm not at a loss for things to do. I will put it that way. So we have been really busy trying to figure out how to effectively get the job done. Even with our reuse program, they are housed in a warehouse in Oklahoma City. The other folks who would be there with them, which is the Blind Enterprise program that is funded by the Department of Rehabilitation Services, they are all telecommuting. So there are only 4 Able Tech reuse staff in the entire warehouse, and they are social distancing. We made sure that they have no one-on-one with the public. It just so happens there's a vestibule area, and so we have a large receptacle that is in the vestibule area where if people wish to donate, they may. We shifted all the services to shipping of devices. That means we're clearly not able to provide hospital beds because would be a little difficult to do so. It went to shipping only of durable medical equipment. We had a really hard time finding certain cleaning supplies, especially even hand sanitizer. And interestingly, there's a distillery in Oklahoma that is in Guthrie, which is not very far from us. And they are selling quarts of hand sanitizer, alcohol grade, at $5 a bottle. And so we had a staff person go there yesterday, and the place opened at 1. Fortunately, our staff person got there at 12:30 and was provided with 4 quarts because by 1 o'clock they had sold out. We got permission to be able to use the University P card to purchase hand sanitizer from the distillery. We're trying to find out right now, when I say we have to ensure that people can still do their jobs if they're going to work remotely. That's been a little challenging because we have a few people, one in particular that had no internet access. So we provided her with a MiFi, but then the issue became that she had a phone that was only on a plan based on minutes. And so we're now trying to get special permission to see if we can purchase, some sort of cell phone plan for her temporarily. That only is allowable on Oklahoma State University's campus for administrative folk, not for clerical. So it's just, been a lot of we do something to undo it, to redo it, to undo it, but I feel like we're coming up, at least for the moment. Now, 5 minutes from now, I could get another OSU news that would, change all of this. But at least for the moment, we seemingly are making do fairly well, working remotely. Those of us who are here still working and those who are telecommuting, we seem to have found a fairly good balance with it. Now, if this goes on for 3 months, maybe I'll be singing a different tune. But for now, we seem to be managing. I'll stop talking for a minute or answer questions if anyone has them.
I don't see any questions at this point. I did see a good suggestion from Angela, which is to make sure that any change in your operational status is noted in all staff's auto reply on their emails. So thanks for that suggestion, Angela.
Let's go ahead and move on to Laurie. Can you talk a bit about what's going on with Access Technologies?
Sure, be glad to. So we're a nonprofit, as you guys all know. I have a managing board who has a very hands-off approach to how our organization is ran. So surprisingly, last week I had 2 of our specialists together all day, working with clients. They were traveling together, and that evening I get a text about 10 o'clock at night from one of the people that said they had been in ER because they thought they had COVID-19. So I told both of those folks they were not allowed back in the office until she was cleared. She has been sick the entire time. Finally got back into another doctor yesterday, and they've ran some tests, and they did the COVID test. So we will know whether or not those 2 folks are free and clear in another day or so. The other person that was with her is bored to death. He is able to telecommute because we sent him home with his laptop. We all use laptops. We're very easy. He just telecommute whenever, the need arises. So to telecommute was not a difficult decision for us. It became a challenge when I made it known to our board that I was requiring some people to stay home, and not all of the board members agreed with me on that. We also have a storefront as one of our finance options. We have the marketplace that has a lot of durable medical equipment in there. And so my one particular board member was concerned that we would be closing something down to the public, and wanted to make sure that I particularly understood that, we are an essential business in that sense. And whatever, it really didn't matter, because when I told the staff they were telecommuting, that did not include me. I just didn't make that clear in my message to the board. So there's actually 2 of us in the office working, and the other folks are telecommuting. It's just a matter of making sure that they have adequate projects to keep them busy. The one person who was not, of the 2, the one person that was not sick, he's a real trooper. He was concerned the other day that I was giving him more work to do while telecommuting than what he actually does when he's in the office. And so he's kind of begging to come back in here. But he's busy right now learning how to duplicate some of the other projects that other AT programs are doing by creating some short PSA videos that we'll be able to use maybe now and also in the future. So that's really his primary task right now. It's updating presentations that we had planned that we know are going to be extended. So for us, like I said, the telecommuting was pretty easy. The most difficult part of the whole process for us is just that, if they're going to use their company cell phones, they have to be in a certain part of their home where they don't have really good service in the area. But so far, knock on wood, we're really doing okay, Marty. It's just, it's different. We're telling the folks that we're the privileged few that get to leave their homes.
Right.
Lori,
Yes.
this is Amy, your friendly moderator.
Hi.
So a question is, are people coming into your storefront? Or
So-
is there not a stay home shelter in place order for
Right, right.
consumers?
So, yeah, so essential businesses can be open. We do have individuals coming into the storefront. We are also under construction. We were just expanding because of the storefront portion. So we do have contractors coming in and still doing their part over on the other side. But because the storefront area had already been 90% completed, we were able to restage all the equipment there. So when a consumer comes in, we can maintain the 6 feet distance. And we have real clear markings on the floor also, so people don't get too close at the checkout portion either. It's not super crowded, but you know, we're having like a customer in the morning, a customer in the middle of the day, another one in the afternoon. We work a lot with the hospital in Salem, and last week the hospital had contacted us and said that they were going to be discharging a lot more patients this week in order to free up beds for the influx of patients they were expecting to receive, and that these consumers would probably be in need of more durable medical equipment than they would if they would have been able to stay at the hospital and complete their full rehab. So we do expect that this week will get busier in that sense. So yes, people do come in. We know that some of the other durable medical stores in Salem are requiring people to call, pay over the phone, and then they'll just set their product outside the door. We didn't want to go quite that far with it yet.
Thanks.
Mhm.
No other questions or chat comments at this point?
Thanks, Lori.
Thanks.
Brian, can you talk a little bit about what you're doing in Indiana?
Yeah, so in Indiana, we're again, I think we're all kind of in the same boat, if we can say that. We suspended a couple of weeks ago. We suspended our lending library and our depot, which is our reuse program activities, through April 6th. And so we did that about a couple of weeks ago. Our agency followed suit shortly thereafter, probably a week or two after. We were letting people into the building. We initially restricted access to our program. So in order to get into our building, we're positioned within a larger not-for-profit. We're an Easter Seals affiliate, so we provide lots of services, medical services, OT, PT, speech, and a bunch of other different things within one building, and InData is a part of that. So within InData suspending services, our agency didn't necessarily suspend services until recently. And so the messaging thing, kind of saying one thing and then having to change that hour by hour kind of a thing, has happened to us a little bit. Initially, we restricted access. We were taking people's temperatures as they would come in the building, asking them to wash their hands before they went up the elevator, doing those kinds of things. And now, as of earlier this week, our building is closed for services. It is still open for staff to come in and get equipment and grab things that they can work on from home. So staff can still get inside the building from 9 to noon each day, but only to be able to grab some stuff. It's not to be able to sit there and work a lot. In our lending library, I think we did what most other folks did. We extended our loans out through April 30th, and all new loan requests we kind of put on a wait list so that we can get to those as we reassess and reopen down the road, hopefully sooner rather than later, but that seems to be constantly shifting here in Indiana based on what our state leaders are saying to us. We've also been working really hard to change or retool what we're doing for our leadership activities. actually the Friday that all this kind of blew up, Jesse Wright, who's on this call with us from West Virginia, was going to come and do a full day training on some things with us, and we had to cancel that and retool that a little bit. And I think we're looking at providing those things online. We use Zoom and can do a Zoom webinar for folks, and so we're looking at for opportunities to retool the full day trainings and all those outreach events that we had that were supposed to be in person, trying to turn those into online events that we can provide the folks. As far as communicating, we use a couple of different tools. We have Constant Contact. If you go to our website, you can put your email address in there and you get kind of probably about 10 updates just about the things that are happening with our program and upcoming trainings and things like that. We have a pretty robust Constant Contact list. We release stuff over that. All of our social media channels, so Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, blog, those kinds of things. We made sure the message was out there. And then we sent key emails specifically to other state leaders and other stakeholders that we work with here in the state, just to make sure that they were aware that for the time being, we're kind of suspending those in-person activities to make sure, you know, we're keeping our staff safe, but also the safety of the folks that utilize our program. We are pretty, we all have offices. So our AT staff, we all have offices within our building. However, we all have laptops and can work remotely if we needed to. Everybody on our team has a Zoom license, so they can hold their own Zoom meetings with the folks that they need to be in contact with. We also use Office 365, and we've been using Teams quite effectively. It's kind of their instant messaging tool within Office 365, which allows you to do video calls and share your screen within a more HIPAA compliant or privately kind of held environment within Teams, so that only people a part of your organization can join in there. And we use that pretty effectively as well. But yeah, again, here we're kind of just holding our breath. Just earlier this week, Indiana went with that stay-at-home order, and so our whole team had already been kind of working from home a little bit more, but we're now all working remotely and working to just stay connected, stay in touch with the folks, and again, retooling the services that we provide to make sure that our stakeholders are well informed about the decisions that we're making, and always keeping in mind the health and safety of the people we serve. So.
Thanks, Brian. A couple of questions, if you haven't already addressed this, and this is just anybody on the panel. Have you had any issues with purchases that you need, or supplies or expenses that you've incurred because you're whatever in a state agency or in a university, and as far as being able to obtain things? And the other thing is just in terms of online, things like online device demonstrations, or if you need certain pieces of equipment, do you have access to your buildings? And it sounds like most of you on the panel do, but have you had difficulties in terms of actually making purchases or obtaining permission to provide services, or for either your staff or for others?
Marty, this is Sarah. And actually, we haven't had any trouble in that way. Some of our biggest challenges, though, have been to have staff work remotely who are not used to working remotely, and may not have the right equipment, maybe trying to take, may have taken home their desktop equipment, which is larger, needing enhanced internet packages and personal phone packages. We've used the Google and reassigned phone numbers to folks. We have one individual who lives in a very small apartment complex, and he is visually impaired and doesn't normally work from home, but he's actually sitting on his bed working on his computer. So we're trying to figure out a way and get him, you know, good equipment that will fit his small apartment, so he can be in a better position to work. So our challenges really have been the equipment to work remotely, and then our limited access to internet and broadband.
Marty, this is Linda. We've had that with a couple of folks. We already mainly had, we had a number of folks who were already used to telecommuting. And so for them, of course, it was no problem. For those who were not used to telecommuting, it really was trying to set up the remote VPN access to OSU systems. We were able to get that done for everyone except the one individual who I mentioned earlier with the phone. We could provide the MiFi for the internet access, but because of her phone plan being minutes based, and I still have a question in, I reached out to my supervisor to say, hey, can we make an exception here to allow to provide some, pay for some phone support? I've not yet heard that answer. That was supposed to have been answered this morning at 8:30. It hadn't been answered yet, so we'll see. With regard to purchasing, there's been no purchase that has been questioned we're part of a big university, you know, personal card system, P-card system, and we have been requested to make a note in the comments section if the purchase is specific to COVID-19. But thus far, not too much. I mean, I did have to specifically ask yesterday, is it acceptable to purchase from a distillery? Because that's not something we're typically doing. And, you know, got the approval. Because that was the place where we could find alcohol-based hand sanitizer, because we have been having trouble finding and enough hand sanitizer and enough wipes and, you know, this kind of thing. At the moment, we're okay, but we are concerned that we'll continue to be okay with finding those kinds of products. With regard to remote demonstrations and that sort of thing, everyone has Zoom accounts. You know, people could get creative with FaceTime, I guess. I mean, so far, we've not had anyone that we could not successfully do that with. I'm not saying that we're not going to have to cross that bridge, but at least so far, because I am really concerned. There is not good broadband capacity in Oklahoma. And my concern with the shutting of all these schools, which they only just found out yesterday that is going to continue for them through the end of this school year. The notation that went out from the state superintendent was sort of like, you know, everything's shutting down and here's what it's going to be. And we have full confidence that all of you will be able to provide online, you know, education. And the districts, we're hearing, you know, we're reading what the superintendent's saying, but we're hearing in our other ear what the school districts are saying, that they are just overwhelmed with the superintendent's expectation that they're just going to be able to seamlessly provide this. So, you know, I think there is going to be a real reality check here going forward, and if not next week, after 2 or 3 more weeks of this, because, you know, schools just don't have the wherewithal, the equipment, the knowledge, the software platform. I mean, it's just not, Oklahoma just isn't there. So I do think if you were to ask this question a few weeks from now, I might be giving you a more reality-based picture of what is imploding in Oklahoma.
Marty, this is Lori. So getting started telecommuting for us, you know, has just been easy. but I would agree, moving forward is going to be the challenge. You know, if we're successful with creating our short PSAs and we're successful with developing a good system to do remote demonstrations, it's going to be the messaging to make sure that we're reaching people with these new outreach methods so that, you know, my staff aren't feeling like they're just creating something that's, I don't know, filling time, you know.
Yeah.
So that'll be the area that we're going to be, I think, challenged with.
Right. This is Brian in Indiana too. I think our, like Lori mentioned, our team was pretty good at the remote working remotely. However, I feel because we used to all be in the same office area or close together with us, there was just natural communication that would happen as we pass each other and we talk with each other. We know what's going on in the different areas of the program. We have to manufacture that a little bit more these days to make sure that we're connected with each other. And so we've started to do some different activities amongst our team to make sure that, you know, we're just not working in isolation, that we're still a part of a team. And so we're doing some team development activities and other types of things to really once a day or a couple times a week draw people in from the staff to make sure that we're connected and we're talking and that, you know, we're all on the same page as we kind of move forward and kind of figure out what this new normal is going to look like for at least the time being. And so, you know, working from home is great, Zoom is great, but it's really forcing us to have that interaction and helping us plan interaction instead of just one-off emails or text messages between each other. Being able to connect face-to-face virtually is something to consider.
I think that's a great point, Brian. This is Linda. We instituted a, you know, I guess you would say expectations about clear communication. So staff are to share each morning what their, I mean, it's just bullets. We're not talking a, you know, short novel here. They share each morning with their direct supervisor what their priorities are for the day, and ask is, you know, is that what your expectation? And then at the end of the day, they share what they have been able to accomplish or not, so that we're having more about, you know, real communication. I will say, if there's going to be any sort of silver lining, because I'm trying to find the silver lining with COVID-19, it is that so much of our time in Oklahoma is taken with traveling in the car. Not so much because we can't Zoom, but frankly, because lots of others aren't, you know, I mean, state agencies and such. So I do think there are going to be a couple of silver linings. Other state agencies who, when we've asked them over the past year and a half, Zooming, oh no, we don't, no, let's just meet. But yeah, they're now saying, boy, wished we had, because in Oklahoma, through the higher ed regents, you can get a Zoom account for a year for $15 a person. So it's pretty affordable, and they are now wishing they had done some of these things. They're now trying to get up to speed so they can do things like Zoom. And the other silver lining, I'm hopeful that I can still speak to in a month or 2 or 6 months, is that we have so many things that were in the hopper that we always want to do, can't find time to do it, can't find time, yeah. And now that we're not running up and down the road and doing all this professional development and other things, we have, you know, videos galore that we've already written scripts for, and our AT Discovery online that we needed to be updating, and everybody had a month and everybody knew that they were to do it, but we just couldn't find time to get it all done. I mean, now those things that sometimes sit in the hopper and on the back burner, they're getting done.
Right.
So this is Amy Goldman, your moderator. So David Baker asks, how are people dealing with mixed messages, edicts from elected officials?
Well, in Oklahoma, I can just speak to the fact that, fortunately, I will say it's been very confusing for some staff who read what the elected officials are saying and doing. My text lights up all day long. And I simply say, we will wait for OSU's guidance. That, you know, which fortunately has most of the time been clear. Now, yesterday, maybe not so much. And they immediately came back out with an, oh, sorry, to be more clear, da, 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 da. So we see all that governor stuff that's coming our way, but then we also wait. And I've had to say to staff on numerous occasions, please trust that I will share with you the appropriate guidance from OSU. And that is what, but I read where please trust that you are employed by OSU and we will follow the guidance that OSU is providing to us. So I guess being part of the university system here is making my life a little more straightforward and easy. Not to say that it hadn't been mega hours of additional administrative paperwork and all of that, but at least I have somebody to point to because they're saying, do this. And then 10 minutes later, do that. So, you know, that part has been okay here.
Okay, Angela and Carolyn Phillips note that their university is tracking COVID-19 purchases to see if they can make an insurance claim.
Well, maybe that's why OSU's tracking theirs. I don't know. We have to make a comment in our P card. You know, when you do it online, there's a comment section. And if it was a purchase specific to COVID-19, then you must note it. And maybe that is why they're having us do it, because they're clearly tracking it for some purpose. Whether or not it's for insurance, I mean, I don't know, but they're clearly tracking it.
So we also had a question from Alan about whether other states are noticing a drop-off in contacts from consumers, either email or phone calls.
This is Lori, and we definitely have here in Oregon. We just don't have that many calls. We thought initially when I told folks they were going to telecommute, we had plans to, if I was going to be the only one in the office, I was just going to forward the calls to their office or their work cell phones, and that hasn't had to happen. So yeah, it could be one person, they could handle all the calls in a day here. Same with the emails. I think people are just busy doing their own, you know, staying safe stuff.
Yeah, in Indiana, it's much the same. I mean, providers, teachers, educators, those folks who used our lending library and other things aren't, I mean, schools are closed. They're not necessarily calling. And we hope that it's because of the messaging that we sent out that they know we're closed to a certain period of time. And hopefully they're going to be reaching out to us at that point. But I'm sure we're going to have to re-message and shout it from the rooftops to make sure people realize that we're back open and ready to go once we are.
Yeah, we have several of our attendees are mentioning INA drop-offs, Maine, huge in West Virginia, Texas, etc.
If we were selling toilet paper, they would be breaking the doors down.
Or hand sanitizer, right?
That's right. That's right.
Cleaning products are a hot commodity.
I will say here in Indiana, we've been reached out to by our state rep, the head of DDARS here, which is the Division of Disability and Rehabilitative Services here in our state, asking about resources for telehealth equipment. And so now that we are a stay-at-home order, you know, persons with disabilities still need to receive services, much needed services, and what, if anything, could we offer to be able to help with telehealth? And I mentioned, you know, we've got 50 or 60 iPads in our loan library. We've got computers with adaptive technology, our reuse program. You know, we gave away 260 computers last year, those kinds of things. But, you know, if there's anything else, other resources that we can steer people to, the demand is going up. And as the AT program here in Indiana and all across the country. I don't know if there's ways that we can leverage to be able to kind of help meet the demand of the folks with disabilities as they try to connect with providers and services and other kinds of things. So,
Yeah. So Jeannie had an interesting view on that tracking issue, whether your university might be wanting that data to get a piece of stimulus dollars. I hadn't thought of that.
Yep.
Might be.
Who knows what's up their sleeve?
Yeah, so Carolyn says she's actually had an increase in Georgia. So that's interesting. So Angela comments that by the time she were to amend any contract for the university, the crisis would be over.
Well, you hope
So
so.
there's no other questions or comments at this point. I have one,
Go ahead.
and that is, I'm wondering if any of our distinguished panelists or attendees had in place a continuity of operations plan prior, and whether they did or not, when you go back to write or rewrite your plan, what will you be sure to include? Particularly as it pertains to enabling staff to work remotely.
Oh, this is Lori. It's definitely something I need to create. I've kind of had a little draft out there for a while, but it's one of those projects I've just never completed, and I don't know that it ever would be complete because I think it's a living document like a lot of projects that we have that way. But I think we definitely need to create some written policies that would make it much easier for whomever could be the director in the future, not just making an email out to their board to tell them they've made that decision. but it's a project I need to be working on, and this might be the perfect time to be investing my time wisely that direction.
This is Sarah, and in Kansas, we had plans in place, but Amy, as you had mentioned in previous messages, they were all, kind of with the thought that this would be a, area-specific problem, like a tornado would hit or flooding, that it wouldn't be the entire state and country, and it would not be for this period of time. And I think that's what we're looking at, the fact that we did send absolutely everyone home. A few of the agencies let their people in, but again, for short periods of time. So that longer length of time and the broad scope will make us rethink our plan.
Yeah, I can agree with Sarah. We have plans in place. As I said, we already have lots of folks who telecommute here anyway. But I think it's the duration of this and the unknown factor that we're all, like, is it going to last for 3 weeks or is it going to last for 3 months? We already have the superintendent here talking about January 2021, because I don't know what crystal ball she is looking at, but she indicated and stated that she believes the worst will happen in August in Oklahoma. Well, someone asked her what she was basing that on, and she did not share what she was basing that on. She's the only one I've heard say that, and I've not heard anyone else yet say that, but I'm like, holy cow, if we got to be thinking January 2021, I'm just hopeful that, somehow that's not that's not the case, because I don't know how you plan for that kind of contingency.
Anything else right now on the, as far as questions, Amy?
Nothing in the chat or the Q&A, and we have about 5 minutes left.
This is Sarah, and I have a question for everyone. You know, you asked the question about what equipment and things were people needing. We're finding that we, like I said, had people with very limited internet packages or even maybe insufficient bandwidth access. So we're looking at boosters and mesh systems, and wondered if others were doing the same.
We've not seen a big increase here with those requests, not to say we wouldn't, because I do think we're lagging a little behind what some of the rest of you are seeing. What we're seeing an increase in is DME requests such as CPAPs and this kind of a thing. And thus far we've been able to accommodate, but I mean, obviously that's not going to last moving forward. And I heard even this morning coming in on the radio that they're trying to use CPAPs as a bridge before somebody would get a ventilator. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, so Jesse mentioned that there's an increase in equipment for telework, including CCTVs, magnifiers, noise canceling headphones, etc. And Carolyn reiterates lots of internet and connection issues, which for sure this crisis has highlighted the fact that really internet needs to be considered a public utility like electricity and running water. Okay, Marty, it's 3:57.
Yeah, I want to just remind everybody again, so next Thursday, we're going to focus on device demonstrations and how to provide successful device demonstrations via virtual means. One thing that we'd like is continue to let us know about either problems that you're having, issues. You know, a couple of the panelists this week have mentioned areas that they're working on that have been kind of on the back burner or ad hoc issues. And I think we'd like to hear about those too. There might be some opportunities that certainly wouldn't have been available or maybe would have had less attention had we not been in the situation we're in. So continue to let us know about that, because we really would like to share in terms of what's happening along those lines too. So I want to thank everybody again so much for participating, and we will have this webinar recording on our website and have information out about next week's webinar. Did you have anything to add, Amy?
We did get a few comments about the fact that the quarter is ending for subcontractors for some of the programs, and a question about advancing a subcontractor money. So we'll look into that. That's not an easy topic or answer. There may be constraints in your agency for doing that, but stay tuned. Again, it's really important for us to hear from all of you so that we can gather the information that can benefit everybody in terms of smooth operations during this very strange time. So thank you to everybody. Watch the webpage for frequent updates, both in terms of webinars and content on the emergency page. Thanks, everyone.
We'll talk to you next week, hopefully, if not before. Thanks a lot.